Welcome back to the Lore 101 series part 5. If you haven't watched the first 4 videos, I'd go check them out first, but if you're just here for more War of the Ancients, then you're in the right place. Hey, if you're new here, my name is Jin, and let's get into it. Last time we covered the events of the book Well of Eternity, so let's just set the stage for where we're at in the story right now. Xavius discovered Sargeras, and he told Queen Ashara about him, and she thought he would make a really great husband. So, to get her new hubby here, Xavius and the rest of the Highborn got to work turning the well into a giant portal to allow Sargeras and the rest of his demon army through to Azeroth. Well, the Highborn actually suck at magic since the well pretty much acts as training wheels for them, so Sargeras sent them some help. At first, he sent Hakar, the Houndmaster, but he failed. Next, Manaroth was sent through, and he actually managed to cut the Well of Eternity off from the rest of the Night Elves. Anyway, we've also got the twins Malfurion and Illidan Stormrage and their childhood friend Tyrande Whisperwind trying to figure out what the heck is going on. At first, they tried to figure out why an orc named Broxagar Saurfang showed up, and then it turned out 2 more dorks showed up. There was a red dragon named Caligos and a human mage buddy, Ronan. Well, these 3 time travelers and the thruple, I guess. No, not really. It was Tyrande likes Malfurion. Got involved in the upcoming war when the military leader Ravencrest started looking for recruits. Anywho, long story short, Malfurion managed to unblock the Well of Eternity for the rest of the Night Elves and deleted Xavius in the process. Now, on to Book 2, The Demon Soul. Now, the Black Dragon aspect Neltharion was hanging out in his lair and playing with his new bright and shiny golden disc, the Dragon Soul. It seems to be pretty powerful too because it absorbed not just a demon's essence or power, but the whole ass demon. Now, a few moments later, Alexstrasza gave him a little call saying, "Hey, Neltharion, shit's going down over here in Night Elf Town. We gotta do something." Alexstrasza, I got a lot of stuff going on right now, but I'll be there soon. Well, it better be soon, because it's going down out there. We gotta do something. Now, Manaroth is getting real tired of the incompetence of the Night Elf Highborn, but his negative reinforcement tactics of, unaliving slackers finally paid off, because they managed to open the portal wide enough for an even more powerful demon to stride on through. And Manaroth shouted, "On your knees," as Archimonde stepped through the portal. That's going to be an issue for sure. Oh, and now that Xavius was out of the picture, Captain Verithan now occupied the second-in-command spot, so it was his pleasure to let Ashara know the great news. I will now reenact that moment for you. "Hey Ashara, great news. Sargeras is here?" No. Why do you always have to say something better to make my good news sound like shit in comparison? No, Archimonde, Sargeras is me, the number 2, he showed up. Now, and speaking of Xavius, he recently had a really bad day. And the sad fact of the matter is he had a whole lot more bad days after that one. But why am I talking about someone that Malfurion turned into charcoal dust? And he literally just blew away. Well, Sargeras still has some plans for him. After some rather intense and enhanced interrogation tactics, that is. So Sargeras let Xavius know, "I have decided that there is a place for you. I have looked into the darkness within you and found that which once pleased me. I make it the core of what you are to become, and in doing so make you a far superior servant than you were." Sargeras decided that he could still make use of Xavius, so he remade him into the very first satyr. He even got to keep his creepy-ass magic eyes. Now, right around the same time, Ravencrest held a press conference to get some things straight. "Zinashari needs to be our focus. Even with all these demons crawling all over the lands, if we close down the portal, no more will come." He continued by saying the Highborn suck ass and Xavius is the worst, and Queen Ashara was still being held prisoner. Yes, they still think she's awesome. And this is when Ronan muttered under his breath, "These guys are so dumb." Brox piped up and said something remarkably profound. "They're marching to their defeat for a lie." Illidan actually thought this was a complete non-issue because they were going to march to Zinashari and take out the demons. Ronan, being way better at magic, decided to bring logic into this conversation and reminded Illidan that if Ashara were to show up and tell Ravencrest and all of his men to lay down their arms, they would almost certainly do it. Then the demons would just wipe them out. What then, smart man? Illidan did not have an answer. Ravencrest continued his little press conference and said they need to attack quickly before the portal is opened any wider. That's when our dragon buddy Crassus stepped up and said, "Too late, bud." "Well, how do you know?" I'm super good at magic, duh. But at least it's a small portal and their master can't get through. Ravencrest continued his line of questions, saying, who cares if just one dude comes through? Trust me, I'd rather fight every last demon in the universe than just this guy. Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or a planet-sized duck? But that's not how that goes. Yeah, well, this master is way bigger than a horse, so. After that little press conference, Crassus, Brox, and Ronan had a little sidebar conversation. Ronan was curious and he wanted to know why Corey had to leave. Well, Corey Alexstrasza wasn't able to communicate with Alexstrasza like normal, so he wanted to check it out. But all Crassus said was, he had to go do dragon stuff. So a little shortly after that, Malfurion was just hanging out when he heard a familiar voice call out his name. And when he turned to look to see who it was, Tyrande was walking towards him in full armor. Damn, babe, you look like you're ready for war. I thought the Temple of Elune just did the priesty shit. With a bit of defensiveness, she admonished him. You may excel at your new calling, Malfurion, but you seem to have forgotten the elements of Mother Moon. Do you not recall her aspect of the Night Warrior?
Night Warrior.
She who takes the courageous dead from the field and set them riding across the evening sky as stars for their reward? This shut Malfurion up. Now let's quickly check in with Corey and see what this dragon stuff was that Crassus mentioned. He went back to the Red Dragon's home base or whatever, and he was nearly home when he ran into what felt like a wall of honey. No, it was just some silencing bubble that was placed over the area, hence why he couldn't hear Alexstrasza. When he passed through the barrier that was blocking the sound, he was shocked to see the dragons from all different flights just milling about all over the place, so something must be going down. Once Corey actually found Alexstrasza, he asked her what was going on and what's with all the extended family visiting. But it was actually Neltharion that answered him, saying, all the dragons have to give part of themselves, just like my flight already has. Didn't exactly clear anything up for Corey, so he would just continued by asking, and that means? Alexstrasza finally chimed in and explained that the Well of Eternity was being used as a portal and demons were just pouring out all over the place once again, because Ravencrest's little resistance didn't really stop anything. Now, Corey wanted to know why nothing was being done about these demons. Neltharion just said, we are doing something. And he held out his pretty little gold coin disc thingy and said, behold the dragon soul. Alright, back to Tyrande. Her and her sisters of Elune were walking through Ravencrest's encampment, and Brox came to see her. He was actually looking for a little bit of counseling since he treated her the same way he treated other shaman. He explained to her that he comes from a long line of warriors and they have all fallen in battle. He basically let her know that his family was just kind of like Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump's, and Tyrande was pretty confused at this point, and she was thinking that maybe this was like a weird self-harm thing that Brox was into, but he then told a story of how he was feeling incredibly guilty about being the only orc left in his company during the Third War. She told him that the best thing for him to do is to just keep fighting, and maybe he'll find his warrior's end eventually. Brox, that was about as good an idea as he could, so he just kept doing that. And at this point, the war effort isn't going too great for the Resistance, because the Legion's tactics are getting a whole lot better. Shortly after Broxigar and Tyrande spoke together, Ravencrest's army was actually pulled into a trap by baiting them to attack a smaller force. Once they were out in the open, the invisibility effects on the waves of flying demons overhead faded and all hell broke loose. Ravencrest called for a retreat, but Ronan and Crassus warned they would need to counterattack quickly, or else they would be pushed back to the slopes of Mount Hyjal and have nowhere left to retreat. With some luck on their side, they managed to drive the Legion back, but not before Archimonde discovered Malfurion on the battlefield. He assaulted his mind and said, oh, so you're the one. The next thing he knew, he was waking up after being pulled to safety by Tyrande. And hey, Xavius is back. Now, Captain Verithan kept his role as number 2, but that was more out of the fact that Xavius wasn't hot enough to really be in Ashar's council anymore. But anyway, one day he approached one of the Highborn and started smooth-talking him by saying things like, hey man, you're really awesome. And you've really been through a lot. More than you should have, actually. This Highborn agreed and just said, yeah, it's been really rough, but it'll all be worth it in the end. Sure, but I really treated you poorly when I was still Highborn. But now I'm way cooler. Honestly, just to prove his point, Xavius gave him some of the wine from Ashar's personal stash. Now the two of them kept talking, and eventually Xavius got to the main reason that he had approached this guy. He was looking for Highborn worthy enough. Dude, I'm like so totally worthy. I don't know. I mean, you're nice and all, but are you worthy? Oh, absolutely. I'm like Manaroth's favorite student. He lets me call him Manny. Are you sure? I don't know if you can handle all this responsibility. But you know what? I'll give you a chance. So, Xavius gave him what he wanted. He turned him into a satyr. Oh, and speaking of Manny, he was actually just having a conversation with Sargeras through the power of the well. And this is perhaps a more interesting moment than I actually realized the first time I read this book. You see, Sargeras wanted to know why it was taking him so damn long, and Manaroth said that he wasn't sure. It almost felt like the world itself was working against us. Oh, that's interesting. Well, that's when Sargeras informed him that there was a mortal he would like to deal with personally. And obviously he was talking about Malfurion since, well, Archimonde told Sargeras about him and said that he was the one that messed up the portal the first time. Well, and he kind of felt bad for what was about to happen to Malfurion since he knew it was in store for him. Alright, let's check back in with the dragons real quick. Neltharion finally got his wish. All of the dragons, including Nozdorma, even though he was suspiciously absent from the gathering, gave a portion of themselves to the Dragon Soul. He gave off this really weird light show after the ritual was complete, but Neltharion ran off like a weirdo saying, okay, I need to go to my room and finish this up by myself, no peeking either, no, this is me, just me, okay? Shh, bye. Alexstrasza was curious and just was, how long is this gonna take? He's like, it'll be ready when it's ready. No talking. So he scampered off to do some final sealing or whatever, and he accidentally hit the Dragon Soul with one of his own scales that was kind of like knocked off his chin from this falling stalactite. Anyway, it hit the Dragon Soul and gave this just the teeny tiniest of scratches across the surface, which obviously freaked him out, and he needed to talk to Meklo right now. By the way, Meklo was the goblin engineer that made the golden disc that Neltharion used as the base of his Dragon Soul. Anyway, Nelly runs in screaming, do you see this shit? How did this happen? Well, Meklo asked a few questions about what had actually happened and figured out the reason that the disc wasn't impervious, as Nelly himself was the only dragon not directly bound to the disc. So it was uniquely vulnerable to him. So as long as Nelly doesn't destroy it, it'll be fine. Foreshadowing, right? Now, at this point, things were beginning to look pretty bleak for the resistance forces, as their numbers had actually swelled to the point where half the population of the army were actually civilian refugees. And one night, while Tyrande was doing her priestly duties and making her rounds through the encampment, offering any blessings or word of encouragement that she could, she saw a young elf sitting by herself, staring off into nothing. Tyrande asked her what her name was, and she placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. The girl was likely no older than 15, at least in comparable human years. Who knows how old she really was. And Tyrande was concerned that she was all by herself. She looked up at Tyrande and said, Chandra's Feathermoon from Ara Hanim. Hinam? Whatever. And now Tyrande knew why she was concerned, because not long ago that settlement was overrun by the Legion. So she instructed Chandras to come with her, and she could have a little snacky in the saddle. While the two were riding together, she came across someone with a fell-infected wound that really concerned her, since he said this only happened to him a short while ago. So Tyrande did her whole, Eluna, lift your name on high, and healed him. Easy peasy. But everyone around the man stared at her with this expression that clearly said, how the actual F did you just do that? Even Chandras was super impressed and said, that dude was a goner, I was sure of it. And Tyrande replied, I thought so too. Now at this point, Ravencrest was discussing ways of bolstering their ranks because the demons just seemed to be endless. And Crassus chimed in to remind him about the idea of getting the Earthen, Tauren, and possibly other mortal races to join in the fight as well. His army didn't need to be 100% Night Elf. That's when one of the nobles, Lord Stareye, said some pretty racist shit about that idea, and things didn't get much better either when Ravencrest shut down the idea by pointing out that even though he would love to do this, and honestly, he actually really likes the Tauren and the Earthen, he's even got some really good friends that are Tauren, but too many Night Elves were just horrible, just like Stareye over there, and it just wouldn't work. Crassus was baffled and tried to remind everyone that they were all fine fighting alongside himself, a dragon, some weird pink thing known as a human, and the Incredible Hulk over there named Brox. Ravencrest's only defense was yeah, but you guys are all awesome. The Tauren and the Dwarves kind of suck. Well, maybe Ravencrest wasn't as woke as he thought he was. Well, Crassus had to do something, so he figured his best bet was to try and get the dragons on their side. At least Ravencrest and the rest of the Night Elves thought they were cool. Only problem was he can't personally transform into his dragon form, so he needed a flying mount. Well, Malfurion figured Cenarius could hook them up, so he and Crassus headed out to this nice tranquil spot where he could enter the Emerald Dream. Just as quickly as he entered the dream, Crassus slapped his ass awake, shouting, "We're not alone, dude!" And hey, guess what? It was Hakar the Houndmaster and his Fellhounds once again. Anyway, they got into a fight and they were totally going to lose. And it's a good thing Tyrande and the rest of the Sisters of Elune in full battle regalia showed up when yada yada yada, Malfurion cast a 9th level Call Lightning spell, and Hakar is no longer with us. Now, after the rest of the demons were mopped up, Malfurion said, "This is a miracle!" Tyrande replied, "No, dummy, it's just good intel. I talked to someone that nearly died to demons in our backline, so I tried to warn you, but your dumbass already took off. So I rallied the troops to save you, reckless butt." And honestly, this is the person who had performed a miracle or two, so she knows what she's talking about. Ravencrest, on the other hand, did not share the opinion that 2 of his best casters just up and abandoning them as good news. Illidan was actually ecstatic, though, and he took advantage of Malfurion being out of the way. He found Tyrande and said, "Tyrande, I can't hold this back anymore. Malfurion's stupid. The well is the answer to our problems, not this druid shit. Come on, baby. Look how amazing I am. Be with me. I will protect you." After listening to him prattle on for Elune knows how long, we finally got a chance to speak. "Illidan, get a hold of yourself. First, the well is being used by the Highborns and the demons alike. What does that tell you? Second, Malfurion has already done way more than you, and you're over here trying to win my favor by lying about him?" Illidan did his best to hold back the tears and said, "I see you've already made your choice. May you two be happy together," and quickly left to hide the tears that were about to come. Now, as Illidan ran away, Brock stood next to Tyrande and watched as he failed to keep his composure and just laughed and said, "Oh, that guy is such an ass." So Illidan obviously didn't take this whole rejection thing very well. He stomped away, muttering to himself about how Tyrande should be his and how, if it wasn't for Malfurion, she would be. And then he thought about just turning him over to the demons. But no, he can't do that. Or can he? No. Well, and to make matters worse, Xavius was watching this whole thing go down between Illidan and Tyrande, so he found the perfect target to manipulate. Now, while Illidan is busy moping, let me tell you how Malfurion and Crassus tried to talk to Alexstrasza, who managed to wind up in the Mother World Tree, Ganir. Let's just say the 2 of them made it to the Dragonland, but only dragons in dragon form can get through the barrier. That's why Corey made it through. Mal and Crassus slammed into the thing like a brick wall. Well, Malfurion tried to pull the whole Emerald Dream trick and try and find a way to bypass it. Crassus let him know, "Hey, when you're in there, look for Ysera." So Malfurion finds the green aspect, and even though she's never met this night elf before, she eventually agrees to give him a hand and speak with Alexstrasza for him. Too bad he blew his cover when he tried to investigate this dragon soul and realized how messed up it truly was. And that's when Neltharion took notice of Malfurion poking around. "Will you try and steal my glorious dragon soul?" He did not take this very well, and had Malfurion not been in the Emerald Dream, he'd probably not be with us any longer. But he did manage to cast the whole same NDA spell on him that he did to Crassus. So when Malfurion woke up, he could only explain so much of what had actually just happened. All Crassus said in response was, I get it. There was another. And that's when one of those big worm thingies from Dune popped up. And Crassus really didn't want to teleport, but they were left with no choices since the worm ate the hippogriffs they rode over here. So Crassus opened a portal and the 2 jumped through and landed in the branches of Ganir. Apparently the portal spell went wonky for 2 reasons. First, Crassus knew teleporting in a different timeline can be pretty much impossible due to your destination often being in a location that you're just not familiar with. And apparently, for number 2, he was sick and tired of not flying anymore. And Ganir wasn't just the Mother World Tree either. It was the home of the wild god Aviana, the wild god of all winged creatures. Luckily, Aviana found the 2 of them stranded in the tree and was kind enough to give them a lift back to the ground. Now, right around this same time, Rhonda Whisperwind, and Chandris, because she never left Rhonda's side, was approached by another priestess of Elune, Morinda. Oh, hey there, Tyrande. I've got some good news and some bad news. Tyrande, clearly being a person of great discernment, wanted to know the bad news first. High Priestess Dejana has been called home by a loon, or the demon that got her, but either way, she's gone. Tyrande was clearly stunned, and the shock just kept coming because the good news was Dejana, or however you say that name, named Tyrande as her replacement. Tyrande thought Miranda was as confused as a cow on AstroTurf. How in the hell could she be the new High Priest? She was just a new recruit at this point. I guess Dejana saw something in her that even she wasn't aware of. Oh, and this news also royally pissed off Maiev Shadowsong. I don't know what rank she was in this whole Sisterhood of Elune, but she was clearly higher than Tyrande. However, she wasn't stupid either, and she couldn't deny that Tyrande had some serious skills, so he eventually learned to deal with it. Now, at this point in time, the war had been going on for quite a while now, and Ashara decided she wanted to see the ruins of Zinashari for herself. So she, as well as her whole royal entourage, went riding through the battle-scarred area. Ashara wasn't very pleased with the way her perfect little city was looking, well, kinda war-torn, and she wanted to know when Captain Verathan would be done removing all of her lame citizens that didn't deserve to be part of her perfect empire. Captain Verathan had to explain to her that they were behind schedule and over budget because, well, they're actually fighting back. And just like any leader would do, she asked him what blockers he was having to deal with and maybe she could correct his stupidity. Well, Captain Verathan pulled out a crystal ball and showed her a few of the issues that they've been having to deal with. First up with Crassus and Corey. Not really much advice to give there. Next, the second set of issues was Malfurion and Illidan. Ashara just rolled her eyes and was like, next. Alright, finally he got to Ravencrest. Oh man, he's such an ass. He was supposed to be on my side. Can you get rid of that dillweed? Captain Verathan thought about it for a second and was like, yeah, it'll take a bit. Might be tough, but yeah, we can get rid of him. Things are beginning to look very grim for the Caldor resistance. But without warning, the demons fell back when the skies went dark, when it was filled with dragons. Neltharion flew high above the battle and yelled, "Now let the power of the dragon soul be revealed to our enemies below." The disc flashed with such power that everyone but Neltharion had to look away. Demons by the scores were being turned to ash as lines of bright light cut through them all. Neltharion roared his orders to his dragonflight and they flew into position. And then Neltharion unleashed the power of the dragon soul against not only the demons, but against the night elves and roared, "All will bow before me. I am Neltharion. I am your god." The other aspects were horrified at what was happening, but the dragon soul held them in place and they couldn't even speak unless Neltharion allowed it. For a brief moment, he allowed Alexstrasza to speak, and she pleaded with him to rid himself of whatever corruption plagued him. His response was something along the lines of, no thanks, and stopped letting her talk. He was just about to unleash the power of the dragon soul against the other flights as well when a pretty crazy red dragon by the name of Coriolanus attempted to side tackle him. By the way, moments before this, Corey had dropped off Malfurion and Crassus after he picked them up from visiting Aviana a little bit ago. Alright, back to the fight. And when Corey collided with Neltharion, he didn't really do anything. No, I take it back. He managed to piss him off. As the two of them fought, well, again, not fight exactly, Neltharion was just kicking the crap out of Corey. Neltharion began to change. Cracks formed across his body, and instead of blood pouring out, there was only molten magma. He then sent the power of the dragon soul crashing into Corey, knocking him from the sky. But by using so much of the power all at once, the other dragons broke free from the spell Neltharion had over them. And it was Malagos and his blue dragonflight that were the first to confront him. But before Malagos or any of the blues could react, Neltharion unleashed a horrible attack, sending Malagos flying through the air. It also drained all the magic and life from all the other blue dragons there, and he likely would have kept the rampage up if it wasn't for his body literally tearing himself apart. He made one final remark about how great he was, and then left to deal with his current issue of a broken-ass body. And to make matters worse for the Resistance forces, when he left, the demons attacked again. And Ravencrest was struggling to keep the lines intact when he instructed Ronan to take over for Illidan. Ronan was able to find Illidan in no time since he stood out like a lighthouse with how much power he was drawing from the rest of the Moonguard. You see, Illidan figured out a method of drawing energy from the other arcane users to empower his own abilities, even if it meant the rest of them couldn't do anything. So as Ronan approached him, he saw one of the younger members of the Moonguard collapse. And when Ronan arrived, Illidan was all like, "Did you see? Did you see?" Like, yeah, I saw you being an idiot out there. Ravencrest has ordered me to take over. Illidan didn't like the sound of that at all, but he agreed and asked what he wanted him to do. Ronan told him to track down Malfurion since he hasn't been able to contact Crassus. And Illidan replied, "Sure thing. Wouldn't want to be without his power, would we?" Well, Illidan didn't like this turn of events at all. But as he set out to find Malfurion, those dark thoughts about Mal were coming back to him. We'll catch up with him in just a moment. Now, Ravencrest was fighting right alongside his troops and wasn't even bothered by how close his allies' weapons got. Roxagar did notice and tried to get his attention in time, but Ravencrest was just in the zone or something because he never saw Broxagar charging toward him, waving that big wooden axe around in the air. And Brox was too late, and the assassin drove his dagger into Ravencrest's neck. Now, when Crassus and Malfurion first arrived on the scene of the battle, they had called out to Tyrande using some crazy magic because they needed a ride. So Tyrande was kind of their Uber driver, I guess. Seems like something she could have delegated to one of the other Sisters of Elune since she was, the High Priestess. But she's new to the job, and it's not always easy to delegate when you're used to doing everything yourself. Anyway, she finally arrived with the mounts, but shit was getting really bad. Demons had cut off the path that Tyrande had taken, and to make things worse, infernals began to fall from the sky and threw Tyrande from her mount. Malfurion pulled her to safety, but his ADHD kicked in or something because his attention turned to a small night elf girl in the forest. It was Chandris. Now, he went to go see if she was alright, but I guess the ADHD side quest wore off real quick because he was like, "Oh shit, Tyrande!" Well, he got back to the clearing just in time to see a creepy goat man standing over her. Didn't take long for Mal to realize who it was either. Those eyes were a dead giveaway. It was Xavius. Now, a couple of other satyr jumped out and grabbed Malfurion and held him so he and Xavius could have a little chat. "Didn't I, delete you?" "Yeah, you did. Put him back, bitch. Sargeras will destroy us all." "You are correct, sir." "Wait, what? You're insane." It's all about perspective, really. And I've died once. It's not that bad. Besides, I'm actually here just to make sure that the person who shut down the portal the first time suffers, and, I just want to make sure you really suffer. So I'm just going to take her instead. "No, you have me. Just take me. Where's the fun in that? Besides, I've already messed with Illidan too." "What are you talking about? What have you done to Illidan?" "Oh, nothing much. In fact, it was you that did it. You see, Illidan loves Tyrande just as much as you do. And it didn't sit well when she chose you over him." "What? That's not..." "Oh wait, I actually need to take this really quick. Hold on." "Wait, Illidan? Is that you?" "Yeah, Tyrande's in danger." To which Illidan responded, "Well, why don't you help her then, nature boy?" And that's when Xavius instructed the other satyrs to take Tyrande and cast a portal to get them back to Zenishari without having to wade through the front lines. All of the other satyr had escaped through the portal, and just when Xavius was about to jump through with Tyrande in hand, an arrow struck him in the chest. A quick little battle kicked off between Malfurion, Xavius, and a little bit of Chandris in there. But ultimately, even though Malfurion nearly took out Xavius once again, he was able to grab Tyrande and jump to the portal, vanishing.
No!
So, Malfurion had failed, and the skies began to grow dark and rain fell all around them. Winds howled and rain poured down all around them. Corey showed up and scooped up Malfurion and Chandris. Malfurion could see the state of the battle had quickly changed. Both sides were in full retreat from this new freak storm. And eventually, Corey tried to talk some sense into them. "Mal, get yourself together. You're doing this." Eventually, he did manage to pull himself together and keep the storm from raging too badly. But it lasted for 3 days, giving the army time to regroup. And with Ravencrest gone, Stareye had been promoted to the leader of the resistance. It clearly was not based on popular vote. Ronan and Crassus tried to convince him that they needed the support of the other races more than ever now. But he just continued to be as awful as ever. So they and Jared Shadowsong, Liam's brother, decided that they were just going to do whatever they had to do to win this war, regardless of what Lord Desdal Stareye thought. Hell, Stareye didn't even want to hear Crassus or Ronan's opinion because they weren't night elves, so yeah, you can imagine what kind of guy he is. Malfurion, however, wasn't involved in any of those discussions. He was talking with the Moon Guard trying to figure out what had happened with Illidan. Well, what he discovered horrified him. Illidan hasn't been seen in days. He rode off on his own, and his lightsaber returned without him, covered in blood. But that didn't tell the full story, because Illidan rode into Zinashari on the back of a fell beast. I have come to offer my services to my queen, and to the Lord of the Legion. And in true trilogy fashion, at the end of the second book of the series, The Demon Soul, our heroes find themselves in a bit of a pickle. The competent leader, Ravencrest, has been replaced by a moron, Stareye. The junior member of the Sisterhood of Elune, Tyrande Whisperwind, was just elevated to High Priestess of Elune just in time for her to be captured on the battlefield by Xavius, which sent Malfurion into such a depression he caused a timeout to the war. And to make matters even worse, Illidan has officially gone to switch sides. And that doesn't even include the fact that Nelthurion went off the freaking deep end and killed almost all the blue dragons. Now let's see if I can give Act 3 the hard sell. Will Stareye ever become the leader that the Night Elves need in their most desperate hour? Will Malfurion ever stop crying? Will Illidan's character be reworked in the future to make him a good guy even though he was totally written as a bad guy originally? Learn the answers to most of these and a whole lot more next time for the climactic ending to The War of the Ancients. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, or even tell me what I got wrong in the comments. You should probably also click that subscribe button too, because this stuff is only going to be getting better from here. So you'll probably want to follow along. And if you enjoyed this, but you want even more geeking out over the lore, you can check out the podcast I do with my co-host Allie, Live Laugh Lore. You can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. And with that, I will see you next time.